I'm an Englishman living in the South, working with a Southern form in the same way that Eric Clapton or Keith Richards might be taking blues music and making it their own. You can hear them in their play and in their music, even though they're not inventing the blues. There's a chemistry in the culture, it seems, here in the South that has allowed for the continuation of a practice and of a particular style. I'm just giving sort of a contemporary twist to old practice. It's a continuity remembered, but I'm also creating a new myth each time I'm out in the workshop. In a way, over the years, I've found comfort in the fact that tradition is almost stronger than I am. There are certain unspoken qualifications that allow you to be a traditional craftsperson, and those qualifications are rigorous. You have to earn them. You're not born into them, you have to deserve them. It's tough. I really admire its complexity for its science and for its lore. I've chosen it quite deliberately.
It's here in the fertile soil on this farm in Chatham County, North Carolina, that Mark Hewitt finally put down roots. He had spent much of his 20s trekking across Europe, the Middle East, and America before arriving in the North Carolina Piedmont in the early 1980s, where he established his own pottery studio. To say this kind of work is in his blood is an understatement. Born in Great Britain, Mark's father and grandfather were both directors of Spode China, one of the premier names in English ceramics. But rather than following his family tradition in commercial pottery, he left England to live in the American South and pursue life as a traditional folk potter. He fires his work 3 times annually in the kiln he built when he first arrived. After each firing, he lines the property with his latest work and upholds the centuries-old North Carolina tradition of opening the kiln. People come from across the region on these special Saturday mornings and make their way through the maze of tables and large pots. It's exactly the life he imagined 25 years earlier when he first came here.
Well, I had an interest in traditional pottery and had traveled throughout the Southeast visiting old Southern potters, and had been captivated by their ramshackle huts and little potteries, wooden potteries. Back in England, the pottery I'd worked at to start with, it had been an old pub out in the country, and it had a certain feel to it. And many of the former apprentices of Michael Cardew, the man that I studied with, had gone on and set up potteries in small farms that they'd renovated. And this whole region had what I was looking for. It just seemed right. Well, there's a really finely tuned sensibility that I have developed over the course of time that allows me to manipulate that ball of clay into something exquisite, something really beautiful, something that's never been made before, even if what I just made was a picture and what I'm about to make is a picture. They're not the same. The pots that I make functional pots. They entertain you in a way that music and sculpture and painting and poetry doesn't entertain you. You know, my pots entertain people in their hands. They entertain people on their tables, in the sink, in the refrigerator, you know, on the mantelpiece, in the garden. You know, those are worthy places for you to have exquisite objects. I don't like the word revival. It's never died. It doesn't need reviving. It's just, I'm adding my voice to it. I mean, I brought with me a whole training that was different from what somebody from here who was born into it would have. And I think it's often the role of outsiders to come in and change the tradition a little bit. And so creating this synthesis could only have happened if I'd come from elsewhere. I think it's a myth to think of artists creating something new and completely different every time they sit down and make something. I mean, I might have 3 or 4 good ideas in a year and add those to the repertoire of skills that I have and ideas that I have and mix them all up again, and something new happens, and over the course of a lifetime things really shift. What am I going to do this time? You know, how am I going to decorate these? What new ideas have I seen? What little things can I add to this? You know, how am I going to place the lines that break up the space? How am I going to place those? What am I going to do this time? A kiln is a very complicated aesthetic tool, and learning what each cubic inch of space is capable of producing is a lot of what my art is all about. And I learned through experience and through, you know, my knowledge how I'm going to be able to get good pots out of each part of that kiln. So when I'm packing, I'm making educated guesses as to what temperature the kiln is going to get to, what kind of glazes are going to look in that particular spot. If I know that the kiln is a little cooler against the walls, I put glazes that mature at a little cooler temperature. In the hot spots, I'll put glazes that really need that high heat. So there's a very carefully constructed interior space to that kiln. I'm finessing, I'm imagining what's going to be happening during the firing with wood, with embers building up on certain pots that I placed, making smart decisions about what to put where. Yeah, that's a real strategy.
You're both over the concrete? That's not yet.
Well, the packing usually takes 5 days, and then we brick up the doors and we actually light a little gas fire. Raise the temperature so it gets about 400 degrees. That takes about 2 days, and then the third day we'll bump it up from 400 to 2350 at the front of the kiln, and then it takes another half a day to bring the heat from the front of the kiln to the back of the kiln, during which time we're side stoking all the successive chambers up the side of the kiln. It's really a cathartic process in a way. You spent all this time making work, and you put it into this womb, then you stoke it like crazy, and it gets so beautiful at high temperature. I mean, you really see the flames wisping around the pots, and it's so ethereal. I mean, pots never look as good at room temperature as they do at 2,300 degrees. I mean, it's just mystical. We're engaged in sort of an athletic event as well as an aesthetic experience. You have to throw caution to the wind at the end of the day when you're at your most exhausted, just to get it over the hump, to make it work well. Salt glaze is traditional to Germany. It started there, and it suggested that at the end of a firing, potters might have run out of wood, and they took some barrels in which salted vegetables or meat had been packed, and they used that to stoke their kilns, and they discovered the pots came out really shiny. I put salt into the funnel, and the air from the leaf blower blows it into the kiln, and it looks like a great big bazooka. Salt causes the silica in the clay to begin to melt and creates a dimpled surface called orange peel. It provides a really interesting, slightly dynamic surface that you can't quite predict. The yellow glaze on this big jar, for instance, without salt is a dark olive green, but salt acts not only as a flux but also as a sort of colorant and changes the nature of the glaze chemistry and turned that green glaze into this golden color. So it's a 3.5 day process, and then we seal everything up and cool it over the course of a week, because there are lots of physical and chemical changes that happen during the cool down that have to take place slowly, otherwise the pots will break. And then we open it up, get all the pots out. It usually takes a day to unload, and begin a grading and sorting process, and try and figure out what we've done well, what we haven't done very well, and go from there. Opening kilns is a fairly sobering experience, because we always have such high expectations of what's going to come out, and we want every single pot to come out just that way, and with this kind of technology they rarely do. I think an awful lot of the beauty of the world and the beauty of man in the world has come as a result of trying to satisfy sort of basic needs. Human level, I'm looking to support my family and to provide for them. Out of my necessity, my need to make pots and make a living, I'm very creative. It's not easy, and don't think it's ever gonna be. It still isn't for me. It's still a struggle for survival. It's a struggle for expression. I enjoy the dream of pots unmade and of making these beautiful things and seeing them after they're made. Those dreams, I think, are what propel me forward. We have 3 kiln openings a year. I'm very lucky to have a loyal following of fans who come out to look for what they want. And there are usually a few crazy folk who arrive early in the morning and dead of night and line up the other side of the gate that leads into the meadow where we park people in the morning. Most people arrive between 8 and 9, but there's usually a group of diehards who come earlier. It's a pretty civil atmosphere. These kiln openings have got a history in North Carolina that dates back to the late 18th century when Moravian potters started making pots outside Winston-Salem in Bethabara. And that same system has continued in North Carolina. And they make piles of pots out in the grass and then go to our rudimentary checkouts set up at picnic tables. There's usually somebody rapping and somebody writing up the ticket. Seems like everybody ends up happy with what they've got, whether it's what they originally intended to get or not. I'm just really lucky and thankful that people continue to come out and enjoy the work that I make. It's particularly about the quality. You know, I want to produce exquisite quality. I mean the whole configuration of shape and color, ceramic surface. I want to just see how far I can go into it. This is my gift. You know, this is my expression. I can only do it my way.